How we living? Welcome back to the HQ. So man's Nicholas. Big dogs gotta eat. BDGE fantasy football. We're diving into the top sleepers for 2019 fantasy football. 2019 fantasy football's top sleepers. Yes, I'm doing that for SEO purposes because I just recently learned that you have to say the words early on in the video for them to match it with your keywords. What's up? We're talking about draft day targets. We're talking about maybe late round sleepers. We're talking about guys that are going to be super undervalued. I have a few names on this list. They all happen to be second or third year wide receivers. And as the spring and summer progresses, I will undoubtedly put out more videos that center around undervalued players and other sleepers and stuff. But these are three that really stuck out to me that I'm very, very, very confident that some people might undervalue going into 2019 fantasy football. So these are must draft players, some draft day targets, top sleepers for 2019 fantasy football. We finished up all of our rankings, our top 10 quarterback, running back, wide receiver, tight end rankings last week. So if you missed any of those, I will link them down in the description. Without further ado, stop yelling, tuck your shirts in, fade the public. Let's get it. First guy up on this list is Tyler Boyd, Cincinnati Bengals, third year wideout, currently being drafted as wide receiver 25, 64th overall, finished last year as wide receiver 16. 2018 was his third NFL season. Boyd was pretty much left for dead following his sophomore season. The Bengals took John Ross in the top 10, so you're like, okay, maybe they're moving on from Boyd, who was also a very early round pick for the Bengals just a year prior. Boyd had a major drop-off in his sophomore season. He had a sprained MCL that cost him 6 games. It was just a campaign to forget. We need to throw that one out the brain, right? Third year, breakout. That's what happened. But his rookie year was good too. I think a lot of people forget that, right? He had 54 catches, 660 yards, which by any measure would be a very productive, very good rookie season. The touchdowns weren't there, but those are things that fluctuate. You can't really blame him for not having the touchdowns. 54 for 660 is a very, very good rookie season. Again, sophomore season was down, but he made sure in 2018 that we learned his name, and I will not forget Tyler Boyd. Boyd. In just 14 games, Boyd was able to break 1,000 receiving yards last year, 1,028 to be exact. Who's counting? Besides Jermaine's. He caught 76 of 108 targets and 7 touchdowns. So a 76, 1,007 stat line in 14 games. Oh, but AJ Green was hurt most of the year, and that's why Tyler Boyd caught bodies. Fake fucking news. This is why Tyler Boyd is a good bet to repeat his production in 2019. These are the splits for Tyler Boyd while AJ Green was playing and while he was not playing. On the left side, you can see that his numbers in the 9 games AJ Green was on the field for were actually better than the 5 games AJ Green was off the field for when Tyler Boyd also played. And I'm sure those secondary numbers on the right side are skewed a little bit thanks to Andy Dalton hitting the IR around the same time that AJ Green also did, but that's fine because we see a great sample size that would account for why his production slipped over this the last 4 or 5 weeks of the season because he was playing with Jeff Driscoll and these quarterbacks who are probably in the AAF at this point. But it's great to see that while AJ Green was on the field in 9 games, so it's not like a 3-game sample size or a 5-game sample size, he was averaging over 6 receptions, nearly 80 receiving yards, and over half a touchdown per game. And the other thing about AJ Green is, right, he's getting up there, right? He still was playing at an elite level last year, but he's getting up there in age. He is far from a lock to stay healthy for all 16 games in 2019. He's missed over 21% of the team's games over the last 5 seasons. So over the last 5 seasons, which is, what is that, fucking 80 games? Yeah, your man's is pretty good mathematically. 80 games, he's missed 21% of them. Y'all could do that math. But AJ Green is far from a lock, so even if you are worried about Tyler Boyd being the secondary piece there, which he is, there's no doubt in my mind when Green is on the field, Tyler Boyd is the secondary piece. He showed that he can do that without AJ Green, or with or without AJ Green. Hella props to Matt Kelly, though. Matt Kelly is the creator of the website playerprofiler.com. He runs the Roto Underworld podcast. He was 100% the only person in the fantasy community that was on Tyler Boyd, and after the sophomore year was still high on Tyler Boyd because of this. He runs Player Profiler, and he primarily looks at 2 stats when predicting future success for wideouts. I have them circled here for you: college dominator and breakout age. He looks at the percentile ranking for these wide receivers. This is big for wide receivers, not the other positions have other things that he looks at for. If you haven't used Player Profiler, make sure you're using that as a resource. It is a phenomenal free resource. Playerprofiler.com. You can type in any player, look at all of their metrics and all of these things for them. So the college dominator is the percentage of team yards and touchdowns that a wide receiver had in college. And then the breakout age is just what age that player broke out in college. Pretty self-explanatory. Boyd was the 86th percentile college dominator, 92nd percentile in breakout age. And that is compared to all NFL wide receivers at this point. So he was above 86% of NFL players in terms of college dominator, which accounts for the terms of yards and touchdowns that he had in college. His best comparable player on here is Adam Thielen, which makes complete sense. You see the other metrics on the screen, right? His 40-yard dash, that stuff, speed score, burst score, not good. But this fits perfectly for the way the NFL goes today. As a slot receiver, right? He ran 71.4% of his routes from the slot. Think about the other guys that are having success in the NFL today in the slot. It's no longer the small guys. Like, you don't give a shit about the Cole Beasleys of the world anymore. It's these bigger slot wide receivers. It's the Adam Thielens. It's the Juju Smith-Schusters. It's the Cooper Kupps. Looking at this cute little chart I made, Tyler Boyd, Adam Thielen, Juju, Cooper, all of their numbers are very, very, very similar. All of their heights are either 6'1 or 6'2. Their weights are between 200 and 210, 215. Juju's a little bit bigger than the other two. What Matt Kelly always points out is if they have above a 50th percentile college dominator and breakout age, then they are a very good bet to have success in the NFL at some point. None of their 40-yard dash times are high, right? They all rank between 4.54 and 4.61 within a seventh of a second. They're all very, very similar players in terms of metrics and in terms of what they bring to the field. And as a slot receiver, you don't need this elite straight line speed. You have way more cushion as a slot receiver, and finding the holes in a zone are far more valuable of a trait for a slot wide receiver than just being able to run down the sideline, because you don't need to catch all those deep balls. You're not getting those targets all the way down the field. But here's the big thing, right? All of those guys are over 50th percentile college dominator. And this is something I've been trying to convey to you guys. And fucking NFL execs need to start watching my channel. College dominator, it tells you, right, the percentage of yards and touchdowns and things like that. That basically tells you you're good at football. You can produce on the football field. A lot of these guys look good, but actually haven't produced on the football field. Breakout age tells you that they've done it at a young age and they've had success. What happens is guys like Calvin Ridley come in the league years older than these other guys, and people get excited about them being polished route runners. Of course they're going to be polished route runners because they've had 3 extra years, or they're 3 years older than a lot of the other prospects coming in who aren't as polished route runners. So if you can have a dominator rating that's very high, that tells you, one, that you can be consistently on the field and producing at a high level. 2, your breakout age is young. That means you didn't need to be necessarily so polished at that age. You were such a good wide receiver at such a young age. So it kind of eclipses everything into those 2 statistics. And these 2 things are very, very key for dynasty football players in particular. If you play in dynasty leagues, right? Like, not every rookie, for the most part, no rookie wide receivers have a big impact in fantasy. Even if their dominator and their breakout ages are 100th percentile. This is good for dynasty projecting into the future. So you're not looking to draft the Tyler Boyd types in rookie drafts over Saquon Barkley. But when you find a guy like Tyler Boyd who does meet these criteria, right? He's proven that he's good on the field. He's proven that he's done it at a young age, and he's proven, it's his 3rd year in the NFL, and he just broke out. So why would things start to decline? We've seen that he's good on a football field now at the NFL level. He's going to stay there. And in my opinion, what makes this season so impressive for Boyd, while a lot of people will probably argue this as a negative going into 2019, is just, it made it so impressive because of the Bengals offense and just how anemic Cincinnati was last year, right? Boyd went over 1,000 yards in 14 games, despite Cincinnati totaling the 7th fewest yards per game, and they've run a ridiculously low number of plays over the last couple of years. Looking at this chart, basically what I did was the number of offensive plays run by a specific team, both in 2018 and in 2017. I wanted to see where they ranked because, new coaches coming in. I wanted to see what the shift in these numbers were. And you could see Cincinnati probably about halfway down the chart there. 32nd in the NFL in total offensive plays in 2017. They moved up to 29th last year by an increase of 11 plays. Per Football Outsiders, since he ranked 31st in total time of possession as an offense, 30th in yards per drive, and 20th in points per drive. Boyd, among all NFL wide receivers last year, more stats per Player Profiler, had the 7th best production premium among all NFL wide receivers, the 11th best target premium, the 11th best dominator rating, and the 8th best quarterback rating when targeted. Now, extra medium Marvin Lewis is gone. He's not in Cincinnati any longer. So they are going to have a major overhaul in Cincinnati, led by their new head coach, Zach Taylor, former Rams quarterback coach. Very questionable hiring, in my opinion. But if anything, it's better than having Marvin Lewis still there. Now, reports said that Taylor's new offensive scheme will be an attack similar to the one Jay Gruden employed before being plucked away by the Redskins. That's quote for quote. I don't really know what that means, but Jay Gruden has had some good offenses. Now, I think what this means is that Cincinnati they're not going to be stuck 29th, 32nd in the NFL in terms of plays run. If anything, that's going to go up and give Boyd more opportunity in this offense. And he was already 11th best among wide receivers in dominator rating. That's the same thing as the college dominator rating. He did it again in the NFL. He's taking a huge portion of his team's production at the wide receiver position. This trend of slot wide receivers that are big, that aren't necessarily super explosive, but can dominate inside the middle of the field. And I think Boyd fits that criteria, like we saw with Kupp and like we saw with Juju and like we've seen with whoever the fuck else I named. I forget all the names already, but it's going to be a big year for Boyd. Cincinnati's offense is ready to bounce back. It looked that way. It looked like it was headed that way in September of last year, but they eventually fell apart. Injuries to Green, Dalton down the stretch to that defense was horrific. Absolutely love Boyd as a mid-round pick with a high floor and a higher ceiling than I think most people realize. Next guy up on this list, another young wide receiver out of Arizona, Christian Kirk, Arizona Cardinals. He might be my most owned player this year just because he's going so late. He finished last year, wide receiver 58 finish, whatever. Current ADP, wide receiver 42, 106th pick off the board. So you can get him after pick 100. Another player highly touted by the Podfather, by Matt Kelly of Player Profiler. When you check out his numbers, check out the college dominator, check out the breakout age, 73rd percentile, 93rd percentile, best comparable, Stephon Diggs. He adds a little bit more to the table than Tyler Boyd does in that his 40-yard dash is very, 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 very quick. Christian Kirk was a beast in college at Texas A&M. He caught at least 70 passes, over 900 yards, and 7 touchdowns in all 3 seasons. He averaged almost 9 scores a season. And Kirk was quietly very good during his rookie year for the Cardinals. He only played in 12 games. He got put on the IR with a broken foot. The foot scares me, but apparently he is ahead of schedule. He has plenty of time to recover. We'll assume he is fully healthy by summer. All systems go for Mr. Kirk, second-year wide receiver in Arizona, in this Cardinals offense. Kirk was Arizona's best playmaker last year. I don't think it was close. He finished with 590 receiving yards, 43 receptions, 3 scores, and he broke a few big returns as well. He's a special teamer. Rosen did not play. Josh Rosen did not play in the first 2 games. But once he took over as a full-time starter quarterback, him and Kirk had a great chemistry. And Kirk averaged over 9.5 fantasy points per game, half-point PPR, in the 10 games that these two played together. This was the absolute worst offense in the NFL, the worst offensive scheme, the worst coaching, the worst pass-blocking line in the NFL. And similar to Tyler Boyd last year, this offense ran no fucking plays whatsoever. They ranked 31st in offensive plays on the year, running just 56 plays per game. This was a year after Bruce Arians had left the Cardinals and was running the plays for them. And the Cardinals ranked 5th in the NFL in offensive plays per game, 66.2 plays per game, a full 10 plays more per game in 2017 than 2018. I expect those 2 numbers to meet somewhere halfway, which is a big boost to any fantasy player on the Arizona Cardinals. Because even if it's 5 plays per game more, times it out by 16, right? That's 80 more plays on the year. That's probably, if Christian Kirk has a target share of 20%, and we'll say that, they run 50 passes to 30 runs over those 80 plays, and he gets 20 of them, that's an extra 10 to 15 targets on the year for Kirk, which is the difference between, maybe wide receiver 20 and wide receiver 18, or wide receiver 20 and or wide receiver 25 and 18, or wide receiver 20 and wide receiver 16, right? These are big jumps, big differentials in scoring that you don't really think of. Again, though, I say this. Kirk averaged 9.6 fantasy points per game in the 10 games with Rosen under center in the league's worst offense. That's right around wide receiver 36 in fantasy last year. So that's a legitimate wide receiver 3, back-end wide receiver 3 in 12-team leagues. If you buy into Kirk being a good player, which if you've watched any film on him, if you watch him play, then that shouldn't really be a tough selling point. then you would say he probably improves in his second year. Let's say, he even it just increases it a little bit, an extra 1.5 per game for fantasy, right? That's up to 11 fantasy points per game. Half point PPR, saying he improves because the offense improves, they run more plays, all of this stuff. Considering he had 3 touchdowns, I think a couple more scores would easily get that points per game number up a little bit. 11.0 fantasy points per game is flirting with top 25 fantasy wide receiver numbers. He's flirting with top 25 fantasy wide receiver numbers this year when wide receivers just went off. In a typical year, those are going to be, top 20, top 22 numbers. Now, we talked about the coaching, how it was straight trash last year. They bring in Cliff Kingsbury. I broke him down in depth in my 2019 head coaches changes, whatever the fuck it was called, video, which I'll link up here as well as down in the description. Kingsbury ran offenses in college that consistently ranked among the top scoring offenses and yardage offenses in college, right? From 2013 to 2018, I'm going to read the stat off to you. Kingsbury's quarterbacks had the second most completions, attempts, yards, touchdowns, completions over 20 yards, and passing first downs nationally, according to ESPN Stats and Information Research. The Red Raiders offense also was ranked third nationally in yards per game, second in passing yards per game, fourth in total first downs, third in third down conversion percentage, and eighth in points per game. They're fast-paced, lot of passing, literally the opposite of what the Cardinals had in 2018. This is what intrigued me the most. These are the slot wide receivers in Cliff Kingsbury's offenses over the last 5 years. Both of them are NFL slot wide receivers now, Kiki QT and Jakeem Grant. Look at those seasons. Those are big. I know those don't seem like huge numbers for an NFL wide receiver, but in college, those are big numbers. Anytime you have receiving yards total over 800, 900 yards, those are big numbers. And this is 5 straight years in which the slot wide receiver in high-powered offense ran by Kingsbury went nuts. And I would argue that Christian Kirk is a much better player than either Jakeem Grant or Kiki QT. 5 consecutive years under Kingsbury, we have these back. Doctor said I need to back you out of me. Big years out of slot wide receivers Cliff Kingsbury. Now the question does become, what do they do with Christian Kirk? Because Larry Fitzgerald re-signs 1 year's $11 million. So he'll be back in Arizona. Fitz played in the slot on 69% of his routes last year. Inversely, Kirk, I don't know if I use that word right, Kirk played on the outside in 69% of his routes in 2018. So Fitz was mainly inside, Kirk was mainly outside. Although Kirk was mainly a slot wide receiver in college, he can play outside. However, in these Kingsbury style of offenses, a lot of times you'll have 4 wide receivers or 4 people going out for pass routes, whether that's 3 wide receivers and the tight end or whatever, right? Normally we'll have the 2 guys on the outside wide receivers, and then 2 guys on the inside, 2 slot wide receivers if you want to put it. So I like the chances of Christian Kirk's slot percentage, the number of routes he runs in the slot, to skyrocket in 2019. To be honest, he proved really well on the outside last year too. They ran a lot of screens to him, which I would assume that they're going to continue to run that because they saw a lot of success with, just getting him in the open field because he is a playmaker, right? And when you have a guy like a kick returner or punt returner who is really good at that job, they're probably very good in space on regular plays, which is why they ran a lot of screens to him. It's good as a deep threat as well. He saw 10 deep targets in 10 games with Rosen. So every game, Rosen was chucking the ball deep to Christian Kirk at least once. That number was higher than Michael Thomas's total, Keenan Allen's total, and Christian Kirk caught 6 of them, which was the 6th highest rate in terms of catch percentage on deep balls in the NFL, 60% catch rate. If this offense can add offensive linemen, I really think that this offense is in for a big turnaround in 2019. I went back last week. Last week, I went on to NFL Game Pass to watch the condensed version of the majority of the Cardinals games last year because NFL Game Pass is phenomenal, by the way. They literally chop up every game and cut out all the commercials and all the dead time in between plays. You could watch, one offense in a game in like 9 minutes. It's fantastic. I wanted to really dive in on Josh Rosen because everyone said he was horrible, and every statistic pretty much says that he was arguably the worst quarterback in the NFL last year. From my eye test, I watched probably 8 to 10 games that he played in last year. He did about as good as anyone could have done in his situation. The worst offensive pass blocking line in the NFL. He was hurried so often, and he was sacked at such a high rate. I can't imagine any quarterback playing well in that offense. He was very sharp on short and intermediate throws. And people make a big deal about having a big arm or being accurate on deep throws. And yes, it's very, that's what separates, for the most part, elite quarterbacks. But 95%, I forget who tweeted this out, but someone did a research, someone did research on this, and like 93% of throws are of 15 yards or less. If you're accurate in the short to intermediate part of the field, you can make 95% of throws in the NFL. Yes, you will have to throw the ball deep sometimes, and I think Josh Rosen has a strong enough arm to do that. His stats are awful, but given the coach, given the offensive scheme, given the supporting cast, I'm not surprised. His arm looked very strong, and he did look like he had a lot of touch on deep balls. A lot of them got PI calls as well. A lot of them had great plays made on them. The video you're watching right now is all in one drive. This first play, you have a drop on like a beautifully touched, nice deep ball. That goes against Josh Rosen, of course, because that's not a completed deep ball. It's just another incomplete deep pass for him. 2 plays later, you have a beautifully thrown back shoulder where the wide receiver just couldn't get his foot in bounds. So this is all on one drive. The very next play, you have a strong strike right over the middle to Fitz. And the play after that, another strong strike to Fitz over the middle, and he just drops it. Now, I want to hear from the Cardinals fans. For people that have actually watched him play, fans of the team tend to have a much deeper knowledge of the players on the team. From what you saw as a Cardinals fan, do you think Rosen was as bad as his numbers or as bad as people are making him out to be? Because I don't after watching him play. Let me know in the comment section down below if you actually thought that Rosen was as bad as people are making him out to be, because I think people are going to underestimate him really, really strongly. And honestly, he will make one of my sleeper lists, I think, as this summer goes forward, bro. I know that any way you look at the numbers, it was awful. And the fucking king of manipulating big facts, could make it look good. But sometimes you just got to turn to the eye test, man. And sure, he had some bad plays and he messed up at times, but he was a rookie, right? And from what I saw, it was more good than it was bad. It was in a new, he'll have a new up-tempo offense. They just need to add pieces on the offensive line. Rosen and Kirk clearly already had a chemistry in the rookie year. They came into the league together the same year. I think the Cardinals as a team represent immense value later in fantasy drafts. I'll even be drafting Larry Fitz. Depending on who goes later, I'll probably own one of these two in almost all of my leagues. So Christian Kirk, love Christian Kirk. Absolutely gorgeous 2019 outlook. We're going to get into number 3. Before we do so, we're a team, we're a family. The only thing I ask, guys, is that if you're enjoying the video, make sure you hit that thumbs up button. Make sure you subscribe to the channel if you're new. We're being covering fantasy. It's fucking lifestyle at this point. We're going to be doing it all year round, which means I'm literally just going to be doing it for the rest of my life. Damn, that's kind of sick when you think about it, and not in a good way. Anyways, yeah, sorry, that was depressing real quick. Drop a comment down below. I want to know what some of your top sleepers are. I want to know who you are eyeing that's later in drafts. Pick 80, 100, or later. You can find ADPs on Fantasy Football Calculator. Just go on Google, type in Fantasy Football Calculator ADPs. You can look on draft.com, which is a best ball site. You can do a free mock, or not a free mock draft, but you can get a $3 draft per draft.com if you use the promo code BDGE. I'm not here to plug anything, I'm sorry. They have their ADP on there too. You don't actually have to deposit anything to see the ADPs on the site. So go check them out. Go look where people are being drafted. See where you see value, because I like hearing your opinion. Sometimes I change my mind based on what you guys have to say. So drop that thumbs up down below if you're enjoying it. Very, very, very much appreciate it. Comment something to help me out with the YouTube algorithm. If you're listening via podcast, I would very much like a rating and review. Lets me know that y'all appreciate me, because I appreciate y'all. Even though my sweatshirt literally says fade the public, so I usually fade y'all. So yeah, you guys drop down below who you like, so that means I know who not to draft. Let's move on to number 3. We're going Chris Godwin. We are back on the Godwin train. We are back. We are so bike. We're so bike. How are you going to fade a guy whose last name is a combination of God and win? It's coming. The breakout is coming. The third-year breakout is here. And I'm going to tell you why. For about 17 different reasons. He finished last year as wide receiver 25. I don't think a lot of people understand that. That he finished last year as fantasy's wide receiver 25. And yeah, you're going to say, oh, he was inconsistent, blah, blah, blah. Everyone, if he's the wide receiver 25 and he's inconsistent, yes, why people who finish as the 25th best wide receiver are inconsistent. That's what happens. What do you think? You're going to get the 25th best wide receiver putting up 1,400 yards and 17 touchdowns? Nah, son. Nah, son. Speaking of nah, son, next for this Friday's episode, this upcoming episode is going to be my players to avoid. It'll be much more than 3 players. It'll be a more organized. I don't even know what's going on in this episode. I'm fucking out of control. I really am sorry if like you hate this video right now. Definitely not my best effort, but I promise that they'll only get better. Finished last year as wide receiver 25, currently being picked as wide receiver 25, 64 off the board. 95 targets, 59 catches, 842 yards, 7 touchdowns last year, 14.3 yards per reception. He didn't, Snacks, what are you interrupting me for right now? Fucking Snacks, we're filming tonight, and he keeps texting me and I'm over this. They don't understand how busy I am. I got to talk to you guys. You're the most important thing in my life right now, other than like 17 other things, but you guys are next. You're 18. You're 18, which is still above fucking Chris Godwin's ADP. All right. Chris Godwin last year, wide receiver 25, played on 64% of snaps, which was the 3rd highest rate on the team behind Mike Evans, behind Adam Humphries. There were 5 games in which he played fewer snaps than Deshaun Jackson, and 8 games in which he played fewer snaps than Adam Humphries. Still a top 25 fantasy wide receiver. And guess what? Adam Humphries is gone. He is gone via free agency. Deshaun Jackson, likely gone as well. They might end up pulling him back in because Bruce Arians is now the head coach and Deshaun Jackson might want to play with him. But he's already went on record saying that he would like to play in LA with the Rams. So it's very likely Deshaun Jackson and Adam Humphries are gone, leaving Chris Godwin as the next guy up. The only guy available up next, yo. He's ready to take that next leap forward in year 3. He had 3 100-plus yard receiving games last year, which wasn't much considering, like I said, this was an all-time year for fantasy wide receivers. But if you look back to 2017, only 8 wide receivers in the entire NFL had more than 3 100-plus yard receiving games. So he was in good company in any other year for the most part. So almost 7 targets a game with Winston, and I think that number was at like 5.2 without him. So Winston loves Chris Godwin. He always targets him down by the red zone, and we'll get into that in a second when we break down a little bit more big facts. But what intrigues me the most is the report from Scott Reynolds from the Pewter Report. What kind of fucking name for a paper is that? Pewter Report Scott Reynolds came out last week and suggested that Chris Godwin could be the prime guy to fill the slot role that Adam Humphries leaves. Look at his player profile. 60th ace percentile college dominant. Wow, that was the most trouble I've ever had saying an English word in my whole life. 68th percentile college dominator rating, 78th percentile breakout age. Those are the key factors, but when you could add on the other things that you see up here, 89th percentile 40-yard dash, 4.42, 90th percentile weight adjusted speed score, burst score, agility score, catch radius, spark score are all very, very, very high. He fits perfectly that big slot receiver mold that I was talking about with Tyler Boyd, Cooper Kupp, Juju Smith-Schuster, all, those guys, Adam Thielen, 6'1", 209. He brings what those other guys bring to the table, but more burst, more agility, better long distance speed. If this report is true, I'm saying. If he's on the outside, I'm fine with that too. But if he actually plays the slot, good fucking luck stopping Chris Godwin. Look what Bruce Arians has done with big body slot wide receivers in the past. Larry Fitzgerald in Arizona, 2015, 109 catches, 1,215 yards, 9 touchdowns, wide receiver 9 in fantasy. 2016, 108 catches, 1,028 yards, 6 touchdowns, wide receiver 12 in fantasy football. 2017, 109 catches, 1,156 yards, 6 touchdowns, wide receiver 6 in fantasy football. We saw how much Winston likes to use his slot wide receivers, evidenced by Adam Humphries having a fucking breakout year in 2018. The best part about all this is how much Winston loves to use Chris Godwin down in the end zone. Chris Godwin had a 28.6% end zone target share last year. That is a huge number considering he played only 64% of the team's offensive snaps. He was tied for 3rd in the NFL among wide receivers. I repeat, among all NFL wide receivers, 3rd highest number of targets inside the opponent's 10-yard line. When they get inside the 10-yard line, he is looking at Godwin and nobody else. Cameron Brate's going to be gone. Opens up more targets. I don't know. That's not a fact, actually, but they have no guaranteed money left on Cameron Brate, big-ass contract. So Cameron Brate's probably going to be gone. Adam Humphries is going to be gone. Deshaun Jackson's going to be gone. 11 targets inside the 10-yard line, 3rd in the NFL, while only playing 64% of the team's snaps. So if he's playing the slot, not only is he going to be getting targeted at a huge rate inside the 20s, but when they get to the 20, he's going to be looking at Chris Godwin a lot. I absolutely love me a Jameis Chris Godwin stack in 2019 fantasy football. I will go down with the ship. I will gladly sink my submarine with Godwin. Some honorable mentions of some other young wide receivers that I actually really like going into 2019. Kiki Cutie, Dante Pettis, Anthony Miller, Antonio Callaway, James Washington, Zay Jones, Equinemius St. Brown are some other young wide receivers that I am all about drafting in best ball in the later rounds of drafts. But these other three guys are three guys that I am going to invest in heavily in 2019, especially in dynasty leagues. That's going to be it. I'll see y'all on Friday for my top players to avoid, my busts, my do not drafts for 2019 fantasy football. I love y'all. Goodbye.